Hello friends and welcome again to Comprehensive Tutorials. In this video we will be looking at pointers to class objects. So that's the focus of today's video. And before we go into today's topic, let's just do a quick recap on where we left the other time. So we had 3 classes in our previous program and we will be continuing from there. So we had the class product, we had the class rectangle, and we had the class cuboid as well. Now the class product was to take these attributes, the price, weight, and name of an object, and it was to compute the amount of the object if the object just had a price, and it was to compute amount 2 of the object if the object had three components like the price, the weight, and then the name. And we had another method, confirmation, and that was for the first class. The second class is just to compute the area of a rectangle, and the third class is to compute the volume of a cuboid. Right, so we had these constructors for the product class, and we had only member initialization constructors for the cuboid class and the rectangle class. So that was just a quick recap on what we did the other time, and I think we concluded on finding the volume of a cuboid. Now in today's video we will be looking at pointers to these objects that we have created. And so to do this, I would want to just comment out to delete these comments that we have, and then I think we will not be needing this too, and that one, and let me delete this one. Right, so this will be a very good start for us. Right, so we have an object called shipment 1, and it's from the class product, and this is what we call the variable initialization. So we have given this attribute to the object using the variable format. I don't want to confuse you, but I hope you get it. So we had 300 point, I don't know why that's 67, right? So we created an object and then we passed in this attribute at the point of construction. So that means we use this particular constructor over here, right? Then we created a second object called shipment 2, which is of class again product, and we passed in 3 attributes. So that means we will be using this particular constructor over here, this one. That one is using the member initialization method. So we'll be using this constructor where it accepts a double P, double W, and a string name over here. So we have double P, double W, and then the name over here. Now the third object was from the class cuboid, and it was called cuboid 1. And this cuboid 1 class has a constructor which takes 3 parameters. It has the height, the weight, and the length. So that's why we passed over here and we created these objects. Right, so those are the objects, and now we want to create pointers to these objects. So these objects were reserved memory on the computer disk. So what we want to do now is to get the addresses of those stacks that the computer allocated for these objects. Now to do this, let me just relate it to the previous ones that we know already. Let's say I have an int a and I want a pointer for int a. What do? I start with the name of the class of the variable, which is an integer, and then I create a name for the pointer. So let's just say pointer 1, right? And before that I have to use the star operator over here. Then this is what, so I have created a pointer I've created a pointer to point to an object which is from the class integer over here. So I've just created a pointer. Now I want to initialize it. I want to point it to a particular object. So I can say that pointer 1 will be referring to the address of A. So now my pointer is legal. Let's run this and be sure we have no error. Right, so we are past compile time and there is no error. Great. So now this is the syntax for the normal pointers that we know. So to create a pointer for product shipment 1, what do? Now product shipment 1 is an object of the class product. Here A is an object of the class integer here, but rather here shipment 1 is an object of the class product. So if you want to create a pointer for that particular object, we have to use the name of that class and then the star operator with the name of the pointer. So let's just say product, let's say P1. So P1 is that's pointer 1 of class product. So this name is subjective. You can use anything you want. I just use the pro here to show that it's a pointer of the class product. Right, so we have created a pointer. Now we want to assign the address of a product object to it. So what do? We start with the name of the pointer product 1, and it's going to point to which one? It's going to point to the address of shipment 1. Right, and we are done. So we have created an object, and the object was given an address on the computer memory. We created a pointer which is of the same class of the object, and then we said that okay, this pointer is going to point to the address of this object. Right, so then we are done. Let's run this to be sure we have no error. Great. So you can always compare it with this syntax to be sure that you are doing the right thing. So we are done creating a pointer. Now, if we want to, you can just go ahead and print the pointer, but that's not the focus of this video. What we want to do is to see how we can use these pointers to do what we want. So right now, we want to get the object and all of that. So normally, if you have an object shipment 1, if you want to compute something, so this shipment 1 used the constructor just product. And if we use the constructor product from our previous videos, we want to use this method over here from the class product, this method here to compute the cost, because we don't have a weight, we don't have a name. So we just want to use this amount over here, which doesn't use a name and which doesn't use a weight. So every object of class product, which is just constructed with one attribute, would be using amount 1. Please, if you don't get what I'm saying, refer to a previous video. Right, so we have shipment 1 dot amount 1 if we want to use that particular method. Let's go ahead and run this to see what the output will be. And we have the price is 300.67. Right, so that's a way to use the name of the object with a method to do whatever you want. But in this case, we want to use the pointer of the object. So what do? We use the name of the pointer, and in this case we don't use the dot amount 1 operator, because when we use the dot, it means that it's a name of an object over here. So you see, the shipment 1 is a name of the object, so we had to use the dot operator. Over here, product pro P1 is a pointer, so we can't use the dot operator. We will be using the arrow operator to get that particular one. So we have pro P1 and the arrow operator, and it gives us these options too. So we can have amount 1, which computes the amount of objects which just have one attribute, and amount 2, which computes the cost of objects which have the price, weight, and name, confirmation to ensure we have paid, in all of these ones as well. Right, so then let's go ahead and then run this. I think I should have a new line over here so that it will be separated. Right, so we have a new line, so we go ahead and run this. So basically they will be doing the same thing, and we have the price is 300.67 and the price is 300.67. Now this one, let's do it this way. I was outputting just 2 lines over here, this first line and this one. This one is just a new line, so that was the space. Right, so then the first line over here is for shipment 1 dot amount, and this one over here is for pro P1 arrow amount 1. So if we want to achieve the same result with the name of the object using pointers, we can do it this way to get it. Right, so that's how to use a pointer to point to an object and to get the method of the object and every other functionality that you will want. So then we will go ahead and look at other things. So let's say that now we are going to get quite compact over here. So at the beginning of the program, we could have done it this way. So we have, let me paste it over here. So we have product pro P1, and we can have star pro P2. So that means that we have initialized pointers for the class product. For example, if you have several integer objects and you have this syntax P1 and P2, you can have up to Pn or whatever number of pointers that you want. Now, that means that you have just initialized pointers for this particular class integer. So then if you have an object int a, you can say that pointer 1 is equal to the address of a, and you can have pointer 2 is the address of b, and all of that. Sorry, this place should be address of operator. So you can have this, right? So what we did over here was just to declare the pointers pro P1 and pro P2. Then we came down over here and created an object called product shipment 1. And then we will go ahead and then create another object of product. So we cut this and we paste it here. We created two objects of the class product. First one is called shipment 1. Second one is called shipment 2. Right, so we have two objects of the class product. So then we can say that pro P1 is the address of shipment 1, and then pro P2 would be the address of shipment 2. And we are done associating the pointer with the object. Right, so we can come down here and do the same thing for shipment 2. We can say shipment 2.amount, and pro P2 points to amount 2. I think that's what we should do now. So let me just go ahead and change these things. So we have shipment 2 dot amount 2, and then this pro P2 is the address of shipment 2, so pro P2 and then amount 2. Right, so let's go ahead and run this to see what the output is going to be. Let me go ahead and comment this out. Run. Right, so we have pen drive costs 800 and pen drive again over here costs 800. So this first line over here was the normal way we know, and the second one over here is for the pointer association. So we have pen drive costs 800 and pen drive costs 800 as well. What if we had used amount 1? What would have happened? So pro P2 go print out amount 1. So let's run this and see what the output is going to be. So we have pen drive for the first line over here, which is shipment 2.amount 2, right? So amount 2, where is amount 2? Amount 2. Amount 2 would take the price of the object. It would take the weight of the object and compute a cost. So amount 2 returned 800. But then amount 1 would just say that the cost is equal to the price. And we can see that the price that we passed over here was 100. So that's why that pro P2 arrow amount 2 returned just 100. So, but that's not what we want. We want an object which has 3 attributes to work with amount 2. Even if you work with this, it's not a syntax error, but I think it's going to be, did they call it semantic? Yeah, semantic kind of error. It will do errors in the future, right? So you'll get what I'm talking about. So let me just close this, and I think that's a basic introduction to pointers to class objects. Right, now the next thing we want to do is, so you can go ahead and create a pointer for the class cuboid and do the same thing that we have done over here. But the next thing I want us to look at is some other way using the dynamic memory. We have looked at dynamic memory, I think probably 5 videos ago, so you can quickly review that. So we're going to have a pointer. Let me just copy this. In fact, let me cut it and go up here. So, right, so we have an object over here. Let me paste it here. So now what we want to do is to use dynamic memory to work with pointers and to class objects. So how do we go about this? The first thing to do is to have a pointer and then have Okay, so let's go through it this way. So I don't know if you can use this. I think I should just delete all of these. Yeah, because we will not be needing these. But then let me comment them out in case we will happen to need them, so you don't have to spend a lot of time typing them again. Right, so I'm going to cut this and I'm going to paste it here. Right, let me cut this one too and paste it down here. Right, so now we have 2 pointers pointing to objects from the class product, and then we want to have another pointer for the class cuboid. So we are just declaring it for the meantime. So let's say that this is going to be cube p1. Right, so we have just declared it. We have not yet assigned it any legal address. Then we came down here. So we have 3 pointers up here, 2 for class product, 1 for cuboid. And we have 2 objects here for class product and 1 for class cuboid. Great. Now, how do we use dynamic memory and pointers? The first thing is to have a pointer, which we have. So we'll be using pro p1. So you must have declared it first. Right, so we have pro p1, and we want to say that we want to assign a dynamic memory to an object of the class product. I hope you get the syntax. So we have a pointer which is of the class product, and we are saying that that pointer should point to a dynamic memory created for an object which is of the class product. So we have not yet given any name to it. Right. So then after that, what do? We go ahead and then assign attributes. So over here, we are working purely with pointers. There is no object name here. To be clear, let me just comment these out so we don't get confused. So I'm commenting these ones out, cutting them and pasting them down here. Right. So now after this, what do? So we don't have object name. All we have is purely working with pointers. So then we want to pass in attributes of the object. And class product, the object can have 1 attribute. The object can have 3 attributes, as we have seen, because there is a constructor to handle that. So when we pass this, when we just pass in this, what happens? Does it go for the first constructor or does it go for the second constructor? We'll see that in a bit. So we have created a pointer to point to an object of class product, and this is the attribute of that class, of that particular object. Now the next thing we want to do is to, let's say we want to print the cost of that particular object. What do? We use pro p1, that's the name of it, with the arrow operator again, and then this gives us access to all of these. So, and we know that from experience, objects of the class product which accepts 1 attribute, we use the amount 1. I'll stop repeating that. Right, so we have this, and let's go ahead and run it to see what's going to happen. Right, so now we have the price is 300.67 as we have passed in over here. Great. Now the next thing we want to do is to pass in 3 attributes and see what's going to happen. So let's take a look at 100, 200, and pen drive. So we are passing 100, 200, and pen drive. And we will be, oh, so this is pro p1. So let's just, okay, let's leave it as pro p1 because we are not working with names, object names here. So pro p1 will point to, let's say, amount 2, because that's what we want. Let's run this, and we have pen drive costs 800. Great, so this is working perfectly. And then one last thing I should have included before we even went ahead to print these is to use the delete keyword to delete the pro p1, that pointer that you have used for dynamic memory association, because that's the advantage. After you use that memory and after you are done with working that particular object, you can clear that object, that particular stack, so that you can use it and reuse it again. We have done that in a previous video, right? So this is a good practice. So after we finish it, we delete it and the memory stays fresh and we can use it again. Right. Now, the next thing I would want us to look at is another thing. So let's say that we want, still on dynamic memory. Now, I want to use pointer 2. So the syntax is pointer 2 will point to a new and then type. So pointer 2 will point to a new memory location, dynamic memory location of an object of the class product. And over here, we want to tell the computer that this particular pointer is going to point to several objects. So we want to specify over here, let's say it's going to point to 3 objects. Right, over here it was pointing to one object. We could have explicitly stated it over here 1, but it's not necessary. So if it's pointing to more than 3 objects, this is the syntax. Then after that, you come over here and using curly brackets, you assign those objects. So let's say the first object is going to have 300.67, and then the second object, so we use a comma after the first, and then we have 2 curly brackets, and the second is going to take 100 and 200, and then pen drive. And the third object, this is a legal object, of course, it would call the respective constructor, and the third one is going to have 400.78, anything. Right, then after that I want to end it with a curly bracket. So this is the first object, which is of index 0, of index 1, of index 2. So let's just end it at 2 for the meantime. Right, so we have this pointer pointing to 3 objects which are of the class product. Again, we are not using object names here. Then after that, we want to come down and then delete this particular pointer. And if a pointer is pointing to more than one object, we want to use the square brackets over here to denote that this particular pointer is pointing to more than one object. Over here, the pointer pro P1 was pointing to one object, so we didn't need to include that. Right. Then how do we work with these ones? Now the normal syntax is, let's say we have pro P2 and we have the arrow operator, and we want to say, so the first, and we want to say dot amount, sorry, not dot amount, we want to say amount 1, for example, right? But over here, the pointer is pointing to more than one object. So which one? We have to specify over here. So let's say that we want to work with the first object, and we won't use the arrow operator. We would use the dot operator. Then, depending on the program, right now we can see that our object is using just one attribute. So we want to use amount 1. Now let's say that we want to work with the second object. In fact, let's run this before we go ahead. So I'm running this, and there is an error over here. It says that expected that before pro P2. Okay, so there should be that over there. So we run this, and now we have the price is 300.67. Great. What if we wanted to work with the second object? So we use the same pointer, which is pro P2, and then we say that we want to work with object 1, and object 1 has, so this was the first object, take note, and the second object has 3 attributes. So we want to say we want to work with object 1, and since object 1 has 3 attributes, we want to use amount 2 instead of amount 1. You can go ahead and use amount 1, but that will not be what you will want. I hope you get what I'm saying. Right, so pro P1 amount 2. Let's go ahead and issue a new line. I don't know if these ones include new lines. So there's a new line here. Great. So they'll be separated. Right, so let's go ahead and run this and see what's going to happen. Now we have the price is 300.67, and we have pen drive cost 800. So that's for the second amount 2, which would take this pen drive cost, computing the cost using the price and the weight, and then the first object was just having just the price, so the price is that. Right, so then you can go ahead and use pro P2 and put in 2 over here to denote the third object, that you have, and you can use amount 2 or amount 1 to do whatever you want, right? So I think that will be it for this video. We have used the delete and we have done this one as well, right? So that's it for this video, looking at pointers pointing to class objects and all of that. So I hope this video clarified things on pointers to class objects. You can leave a comment in the comment section on what you think or what you think should be covered, and if you have any recommendations that you have. Until the next video, stay safe. Bye.